Our scripture reading this morning comes from Psalm 27, and this is a redo. This is by my colleague that when I was in Oxford, she was my mentor, the Reverend Carla Groschmiller, and this is her redo of Psalm 27. You are my source, my way, my home. In you I rest secure. In you I gather strength. In you I begin to see. When fear arises from within or from without, I remember who you are and how I am in you. Oh, that I may dwell in you day by day, moment by moment, then peace would be mine. Then I would persevere when the waters threaten to overwhelm. Then my eyes would be filled with beauty and my mouth with song. Then courage and wisdom would carry me to safe shores. This I know, you are. The living, all who turn to you turn towards home. And then our gospel reading comes from the Gospel of Luke this morning. At that time, some Pharisees approached Jesus and said, "Go, get away from here, because Herod wants to kill you." Jesus said to them, "Go tell that fox, look, I'm throwing out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day, I will complete my work. However, it is necessary for me to travel today, tomorrow, and the next day, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who were sent to you, how often I have wanted to gather your people just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you didn't want that. Look, your house is abandoned. I tell you, you won't see me until someone comes when they say, the time comes when you will say, blessings on the one who comes in the Lord's name. I love it. Jesus is not messing around this morning. When the Pharisees tell him Herod's looking for him, he doesn't give a rip. You go tell that fox what I'm up to. Now, calling somebody a fox, particularly a leader, is generally not a good thing to do, especially if you want to be on the good side. A lion would have been more respectful, correct? A fox? Jesus calls him a fox. He calls Herod a fox because foxes are sly and cunning. They hunt preferably at dark, in the dark of the night or early morning or early evening, and they are voraciously destructive. Let a fox in the hen house and see what you get. Generally a big mess. So Jesus' words are pointed and powerful. Not only do they matter on that day, but they mattered years later to the early Christian community who needed to be mindful of their co-option by the powers of their day. And the words bore their power over the generations, years and years, as Christians have struggled with the power of empire over their lives. Time and time again, Christians have realized the fox in the guise of political or religious power and said, no. You go tell that fox and his friends what we're doing. You go tell them just what we're doing. So just what was Jesus doing on those 3 days? He was healing and casting out demons, restoring people to wholeness and community, looking at each person with dignity and love, offering healing, a healing touch, or maybe just the touch of his garment to do all the powerful things he did. And every single one of them, every healing, every casting out of demons, every confrontation with the powers that be, were always done as a manifestation of love. That's what Jesus did. Go tell that fox what we're up to. No problem. And Christians have done this time and time and time again. When the fox says, look here, shiny thing, you know that thing, right? That shiny thing, whether it looks like power or riches or security or just simply taking care of yourself. Look here it is. I've got it. I'll give it to you. And it's tempting. It's always tempting. It's always tempting to go the way of the world and fall in line and accept the comfort of life and an often invisible cost to others. Throughout the ages and across the generations, Christians have repeatedly been tempted and said no. We can be about, and we will be about, healing and restoration, wholeness and thriving and caring for all people and all of creation and respecting each one's dignity and the dignity of creation. That's what Jesus was about when he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Jerusalem. You've been there, Franz. Others here in this congregation may have been there as well. Jerusalem was the center of the world for a first century Jew. No place held such power in their lives. It was the very place where God resides. There in the beautiful second temple on the hill in Jerusalem, in the center of all the courtyards was the temple, and in the temple was the Holy of Holies, right in the very middle. That was the place, the only place where God dwelled. God's presence was there in a powerful way for every first Christian century Jew. No place else held such profound impact on a life. And it might be difficult for us to understand. We come and celebrate an empty cross, the resurrection and the beyond, that rosenness of Jesus. Absolutely. Jesus is no longer confined to a place, but for Jesus, God was in that moment confined to a place. Every Jewish person understood that place, the city of Jerusalem, to be home of God, and that place mattered. And that's why Jesus lamented. You cannot lament what you don't love. Don't cry over spilt milk, right? Okay, fine. But what do you do when you lose someone you love? You lament because you loved. You lament heartache and loss, and Jesus truly lamented. Here you are, right in the center of the place that God dwells. You right in the shadow of the temple. You can go up to the mount. You can be there. You've seen the prophets. You've seen and know the smell of offerings burnt to offer to God. The air that you breathe is filled with the incense of offerings, and you don't get it. Oh, the lament would be so real. How many times do you have to see it? How many times do I have to tell you? It's right here, right now. And you turn away. Jesus lamented because they turned away and listened to the fox, whoever and whatever that fox might be, that has turned their hearts from the way of God. Oh, my loves, what I wouldn't give to let you know how much I love you. What I wouldn't give to let you know how beloved you are. I love you with the tenacity and ferocity of a mother hen. I do. I would gather you into my arms under the shelter of my wing to let you know, here you are safe. Here you are known. Here you are held. I will shelter you in the shadow of my wing, and I will give my life for you. For no other reason than I love you. I love you. It's true that we cannot protect all those that we love. Jesus knew this. And he also knew that sometimes all we can do is open our arms, and we can't make them walk into it. But that's all we can do, is to stand there, like that mother hen to gather her chicks inside, breast up, vulnerable, open and willing to love even unto death. This is the most vulnerable position in the world. But if you are about the way of Christ, this is the way you stand. This is the way you are, ready to love in the face of a fox. And this is how Jesus loved, arms outstretched. And I don't think they needed nails that day. I really, really don't. They used them to exert their power that they need not have exerted, for his love would have held him there. And on the cross, just like when he looked at Peter, when that cock crowed, he looked at the people with compassion and said the words from the cross, "Forgive them. They know not what they do." Oh, that I could gather you in, that I could keep you safe as a mother hen, with fierce ferocity, with tenacity, and mostly with hope. I will hold you in. When that look of compassion comes at the cock of the crow, the crocking of the crow or the rooster, or from the cross, we look away and say, "I don't deserve it. I've sinned. I've looked at the way of the fox and we have earned condemnation." That's not what we get. It's never what we get. We always get grace. We always get compassion. We always get forgiveness, undeserved yet freely given. Jesus is not messing this morning. You tell that fox, the real and powerful one that was and is and will be, that you will not deter us from the work that we're to be about, the sharing of God's love so that we so freely receive. Now, you always need to remember that the cross is the key to the fullness of life in Christ, the fullness of love that is unbounding, the fullness of compassion that is yours and mine simply because. It's the constant reminder of God's steadfast and unkillable love for the world. When we remember this and truly follow Jesus, the words of the psalmist ring true. This I know, you are. I am, in you I am. Your goodness is seen in the land of the living, and all who turn to you turn towards home. Now, what will go here for the children to see and you to see is a cross of keys. Keys to suitcases and homes and closets, keys to those itty bitty treasure chests. Remember those little bitty locks? Those little bitty, there it is, the little bitty lock to the great big one. The key to your life and love in Christ is always the cross. Way to remember what really matters. Now you're going to have to tell your kids what that's about, just so you know. So you know. It is my honor and privilege, Franz, to invite you up to share some words from the conference and what the things that we're about and whatever you want to share. The table is yours. The mic is yours. Oh, we're supposed to sing a song. Do we want to sing a song now? We can do it after you. We'll do it after you. This is how we roll.
This is how I roll. Grace and peace, friends. It's a joy to be here. Good morning. St. John's UCC Merton. I don't know that I've met a more joyful congregation. You got something going on here. And wow, the children you have here, how amazing. And sorry about that. And Mary Jane, you kind of get that you have a gift in Mary Jane, yeah? Great.
I have to stay 27 more years.
27 more years. Wow.
Not sure.
Well, hang on for that ride. I want to greet you in the spirit of the United Church of Christ, a little bit wider than this congregation. We have 207 congregations. By the grace of God, every which one of them has a person in a pulpit this morning. That's been increasingly difficult because finding ministers isn't the easiest thing these days. I also want to greet you from the Reverend Rachel Bauman, who is your associate conference minister in this region and has done some good stuff with your congregation and the 70-some churches that she tends to. I want to give you thanks this morning for many things. Thanks for the energy and enthusiasm and dynamic that is clearly here. You are what we would call a star church, small town and rural church. I'll say more about that in a second, but it's a great little designation that is coming to the United Church of Christ this summer, perhaps. I want to give you thanks for the gifts that you pass on to the wider church, and here's why. Because in the wider church, we share educational, we share staffing that helps transitions when ministers come and go, that does conflict resolution in congregational life, that does all of the ecclesiastical matters. That's a long word that just means everything from a person thinks they might be called to ministry until they are ordained, and the standing that they have and all of the technical stuff that goes with that. None of that stuff can happen unless all of our congregations collectively pool a little bit of their resources together to make it happen. So in a sense, we gift each other with the kind of ministry resources in the wider church that all of us need. So I want to celebrate that. And I have looked and realized how incredibly faithful this particular congregation has been to the wider church over history. And so I'm grateful for that and want to share that with you. You may be interested in knowing we're doing kind of an organizational change these days in our conference life. So our conference is Wisconsin, and there are about 30-some of me around the whole country. And the change is a reaction to the reality that churches, not just the United Church of Christ, churches all across America of every stripe, have diminished over time. We're 1/3 in the United Church of Christ what we were in the 60s, in the 1960s. Some people, there are some mega churches that are doing pretty well, great, but they're kind of anomalies. Most congregations have recognized the downshift and the deinstitutionalizing sort of American religion. To that end, what we've realized, and we're watching the patterns around the country, is that most conferences cannot very well sustain what we call two judicatory levels. That's a long word, but it really means structural levels between the local church here in Merton and the national setting. Our national setting is Cleveland, Ohio. So we've got a conference, and we have 4 associations: Southeast, Southwest, Northeast, Northwest. And it has become increasingly difficult for us to find volunteers to do all the things that happen in the associational space. So here's what we're living into. We're on our way to dissolving the structures of the associations, getting some efficiency pickups, and we're not just leaving something behind, we're building out a digital connecting resource center that essentially allows our congregations across the whole conference to do the two things that in the many listening sessions we held rose to the top. One, to have some relationship and some connection with people in the UCC beyond the local church. And two, to resource each other in ministry. So we're inviting people with all kinds of passions to join these little working groups, these little cells of ministry for the purpose of connecting, being relational together, and having a resource that other churches can use. This began really with our justice resource groups. We have about 8 of them. They're working groups, and their primary mission is to help local churches figure out how to take that justice on. So I wanted to tell you about that little bit of structural change that's on the way. If you have questions about it in particular, you can see me later. This is all made possible by our ability to digitally connect. We do so much on Zoom and so much in various ways of social media. I want to know you to know one other thing that's happened in the life of the church, and then I'll say some things about my observations of this congregation, and then I'll sit down. You may know that almost 2 years ago, the conference office was north of Madison in DeForest. We had a lovely, many thousand square foot office. And one of our 3 camps, Pilgrim Center, now called Dechola Center, which is the native Ho-Chunk name for Green Lake, on which it sits. And there are effigy burial grounds on the grounds of Dechola Center. Dechola Center in particular ran into financial trouble. That is a pristine people throughout the Wisconsin Conference. So we made the decision to sell the office, a couple $1 million, and we invested that money in the camp corporation for the preservation of that camp and gave them a 4-year ramp model and live into a new and different future. Beautiful so far. Our staffs interact because now our office is at Dechola, so that's where our home base is. And so we have a growing partnership and a new mission for that particular camp. And I thought maybe you'd want to be aware of that. Then the last thing I want to share with you is this summer, we gather for General Synod. About 30 delegates from the Wisconsin Conference and some of our staff folks will be in Kansas City. That happens every 2 years up until this summer. After this summer, it'll happen every 3 years. It's a costly undertaking, and it's a major undertaking for the national staff. And 2 kind of interesting things. We'll probably have maybe 10 resolutions this summer, but 2 sort of interesting ones are coming, and I just want to let you know what they are. The first one is the state of Pennsylvania is a bit of an anomaly for the United Church of Christ because they have 4 conferences. They have like 500 some churches. And just in Pennsylvania. Yeah, and they will come together this summer as one Keystone State, one Keystone Conference. That is indicative of sort of what's happening around the wider United Church of Christ, is that we are trying to come together and collaborate a lot more in places that make sense. The other thing I want to circle back to and end with is a resolution around star churches will come. We have designations for many churches, like if you're open and affirming, that's a designation for a congregation. We have a lot of proud, open and affirming congregations. We have designations for some of our churches of color and other ethnic identity. Though we don't have much in this conference, we have one native congregation, but not a whole lot of ethnic congregations. This new identity called STAR is really to this morning dynamic of small town and rural United Churches of Christ. Sometimes, maybe not you, but some of them hang a little more on the conservative side in our big tent, and every single one of them has some ministry that they do really uniquely. And so this designation is to lift that up. And I would just say in closing, I'm amazed by the 5 congregational collaborative effort you all have done around refugee resettlement. That is a story to be told far and wide. I'm amazed at the way you support 2 pantries, I think, the Sussex. Amazed that in Malawi you keep a ministry presence, a mission, and that you care about the awful pastor and people here that seek to do something about that. There is so much to celebrate in this place and so much spirit alive. Glory be to God for you. You are something else. Thanks. Amen.